يجوز أن نفسد في علاقاتنا التاريخية.
Good afternoon on this Thursday, December 12th. I'm Yumna Naufal and these are today's headlines. The Alexis storm continues to lash across the country as schools remain closed for a second day in a row. Syrian refugees continue to battle freezing temperatures as concerns grow among authorities. And Iran and Saudi Arabia are among the countries expected to attend the peace conference taking place in Geneva next month regarding the crisis in Syria. The storm continues to lash across the country as schools remain closed for a second day in a row, and authorities warn of more road closures. The weather is expected to worsen dramatically, bringing freezing temperatures, high winds, and precipitation until Saturday. 2 people died in a car accident along the Saida Tire Highway by the town of Adloun, but very few weather-related accidents were actually reported, despite fears that the storm titled Alexa would overwhelm the country's dilapidated infrastructure. Public officials have been trading blame over the Public Works Ministry's failure to clear the sewers and drainage systems ahead of the winter. Meanwhile, municipalities prepared small snow plows to aid the Transport and Public Works Ministry in opening roads as temperatures dropped below zero. Caretaker Social Affairs Minister Wael Abu Faoud is expressing fear over the disastrous conditions of the Syrian refugees in Lebanon amid the winter storm hitting the country. In comments, he pointed out the weakness of the aid program, insisting that the reasons behind the state's paralysis is due to the absence of any unified political decision to establish formal camps for the refugees. Abu Faoud warned that the frosting will take the lives of people and the state can do nothing about it. He said that the ministry kicked off a campaign in coordination with NGOs to provide the refugees with clothes, winter supplies, and heaters. In other comments, the UN Refugee Agency reported that there were concerns for thousands of people living in more than 200 informal camps in central and north of the country. Despite the conditions, refugees are continuing to arrive, fleeing the war. A meeting was held between Future Movement leader Saad Hariri and the head of the movement's parliamentary bloc, MP Fouad Senyoura, in the French capital of Paris. According to reports, Senyoura briefed Hariri on the latest consultations with the Lebanese foes in light of the announcement of the start of the trial in the case of Ayash on January 16, 2014. The Special Tribunal for Lebanon was set up to tackle the 2005 assassination of former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. The meeting also came ahead of a national conference for the March 14 Alliance on Sunday in Tripoli. The attendees are expected to issue a final statement that rejects to consider Tripoli as a city for a certain sect that includes all others. The northern capital has been the scene of clashes between the Sunni majority and the minority of Alawites, where violence has usually pitted the neighborhood of Bibit Tabbani and Jabal al-Muhsin. And the world is grieving today because it marks the 8th anniversary of Lebanese politician and former editor and publisher of the daily paper An-Nahar, Gibran Twaini's assassination. He was killed in a car bomb on the 12th of December 2005 in Mkelles, an industrial suburb of Beirut, while he drove from his home in Beit Midi to his newspaper offices in Beirut's Martyrs Square. He was the 7th target in a series of assassinations of politicians, journalists, and security personnel that had begun in Lebanon in 2005. He came to international prominence in March of 2000 when he wrote a front-page letter to Bashar al-Assad, the son of then heir apparent to then Syrian President Hafez al-Assad, calling for the withdrawal of Syrian troops from Lebanon following the 1990 Ta'if Accord that ended Lebanon's civil war. With this editorial, he broke an important press taboo. His letter was published when a summit between then U.S. President Bill Clinton and then Syrian President Hafez al-Assad was held in Geneva. Iran and Saudi Arabia, which back the opposite sides in Syria's war, are among more than 30 countries slated to attend the peace conference next month held in Geneva. The so-called Geneva II conference, a follow-up to the 2012 meeting, is aimed at mapping out a political transition to end nearly 3 years of fighting that has killed more than 120,000 people and displaced millions. But the January 22nd meeting will actually be held at the lakeside Swiss city of Montreux because of a shortage of hotel rooms in Geneva, which will be hosting a luxury watch fair. Most countries will be represented by their top diplomats, and each minister can speak for about 5 minutes, according to an Arab diplomat. The regime and the opposition will each send delegations to the meeting and will hold bilateral talks hosted by UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi on January 24th. A spokesman for Syria's main Western-backed rebel group is criticizing the decision by the United States and Britain to suspend non-lethal aid to opposition fighters in the north of Syria. The U.S.-British decision reflected Western fears of the growing strength of al-Qaeda-linked forces among the rebels. It came after some of the aid was seized by Islamic militants. The rebel spokesman, Lawai al-Migdad, said that Free Syrian Army commanders would contact U.S. and British officials to clear up the misunderstanding. He says hopes the decision would be reconsidered because it would impact negatively on the Syrian people, not just the rebel Free Syrian Army. The suspension was another blow to the rebels amid diminished international support for their struggle and recent losses on the battlefield against President Bashar al-Assad's troops. Coming up next, how many letters will Santa Claus receive this year? We'll find out right after these messages. Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is marking his 70th birthday with another trip to Israel in his dodged quest for an elusive Middle East peace deal. He will be pressing a West Bank security plan in closed-door talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Both sides are skeptical, but U.S. officials hope that winning approval for the plan will unblock negotiations on other issues like borders, the status of Jerusalem, and the fate of Palestinian refugees. With U.S. facilitation, Israel and the Palestinians agreed to resume peace talks in August with a 9-month target for reaching agreements. Kerry's latest visit comes amid few, if any, tangible signs of progress and Palestinian unhappiness with the security plan. The United Nations closed its offices in the Yemeni capital over fears of possible car bomb attacks, but Western embassies remain open in Yemen. Most shops in Sana'a were shuttered and little traffic ventured out onto the streets as rumors swirled among the city's residents of the risk of an imminent attack. The American and Turkish schools were also closed. Security forces have been on high alert in the capital since a brazen daylight attack on the Defense Ministry's sprawling headquarters on December 5th killed 56 people, among them expatriate medical staff. Information gleaned during the investigation into the attack, which was claimed by al-Qaeda, led to the discovery of 2 cars packed with explosives and a massive search for 5 more suspected to be still inside Sana'a. A UN source said on Wednesday that a warning from Yemeni authorities of a possible attack in Hada, the South Sana'a neighborhood where UN offices are located, had triggered the closure order. The son of slain Libyan dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam, appears in court in the western city of Zintan on charges of threatening national security. According to the court-appointed legal representative, the trial hearing lasted only 5 minutes and was adjourned to February 27th due to the absence of the other accused. On October 24th, a Tripoli court indicted Saif and about 30 Gaddafi aides for a raft of alleged offenses during the 2011 revolt which toppled the regime. Saif al-Islam, Gaddafi's former heir apparent, is still wanted for trial by the ICC on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity during the uprising. The ICC in May rejected Tripoli's request to try the late dictator's son in Libya because of doubts over a fair trial. Tripoli has since then appealed the decision. And demonstrations continue in Ukraine as the United States warns of possible sanctions over Kiev's crackdown on opposition protests, urging authorities to show restraint. Forced riot and protesters' police to retreat following a pre-drawn raid on their protest camp and a blow to the authority of President Viktor Yanukovych. International pressure is mounting on the embattled leader, with EU Foreign Policy Chief meeting him twice in recent days, and U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland qualifying the attempted police crackdown as inadmissible. About 30 people were injured when riot police and Interior Ministry special forces moved against the demonstrators. But just hours later, Yanukovych vowed authorities would never use force against peaceful protests. The United States said it is considering a range of options in response to the crackdown, including possible sanctions. And protesters in Thailand's capital of Bangkok cut off electricity to the Prime Minister's office compound, demanding that police abandon the premises. Earlier on Thursday, a group of student protesters cut through barbed wire and scaled the wall of Government House, where the Prime Minister's office is located. Now, the opposition-backed protesters seeking to force the replacement of caretaker Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawtra's government before a February 2 election have threatened to force their way in if police do not leave. They want the building to be surrendered to the control of the armed forces. And a dozen neglected children, some with deformities or disabilities due to generations of inbreeding, have been found on a rural Australian settlement in an incest case that has shocked the nation. The 12 children, aged between 5 and 15, were removed by social workers who responded in July 2012 to complaints that they were failing to attend school. Police and child protection workers visited the farm compound where they were living with some 30 adults, multiple generations of the same family. They found what legal documents described as very dirty and hazardous conditions. Genetic testing revealed that 11 of the 12 children had parents that were related and had a range of disabilities, including deafness and blindness. Due to the seriousness of the case, the Children's Court published its ruling, originally made in September, saying there is no realistic possibility of restoration of any of the children to their parents. They were ordered to remain in state care until they are 18 years old. Nelson Mandela was reclaimed by South Africans who queued patiently in their thousands to file past his open casket on a day of viewing reserved for the public. On Wednesday, the cameras of the world had been trained on world leaders, VIPs, and celebrities paying tribute to a man known for his common touch, relating to princes and paupers with equal ease. Ordinary mourners from all walks of life had also queued for hours on end to view the body, but many were turned away by evening without having made it to the front of the long, winding line of people united in grief and gratitude for the father of their democratic nation. Many returned for another chance on Thursday, with the entire day given over to the general public access. On Wednesday, Mandela's widow, Graça Machel, and other family members were followed by presidents, royalty, and other international figures in paying their last respects in the amphitheater of the Union's buildings, where the Nobel laureate is laying in state. Now, many of us cannot recall the last time we got a letter in the mail, but Santa will this year receive a record 8 million of them, according to the United Nations. Global Post Services expect to sort through that number of wish lists by the time Christmas rolls around, according to a survey by the Universal Postal Union, which coordinates the world's mail system. That is 2 million more than the haul estimated in a similar survey back in 2007. Postal services in Canada, France, Spain, and Ireland are reporting increases in the numbers of letters sent to Santa, Père Noël, or the Three Wise Men from last year. UPU is saying in a statement referring to the French and Spanish versions of the famous gift deliverer. Last year, the French held the record with 1.7 million letters, followed by Canadians who penned 1.35 million. Frequently addressed just to Santa, North Pole, these letters are handled by some 20 postal services worldwide. UPU said many have created formal programs to help answer the missives. As a universal superstar, UPU says Santa maintains addresses in many, many parts of the world. On that note, we end our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. The Alexa storm continues to lash across the country as schools remain closed for a second day in a row. Syrian refugees continue to battle the freezing temperatures, which are expected to get worse as concerns grow among authorities. And Iran and Saudi Arabia are among the countries expected to attend the peace conference regarding Syria and its crisis taking place in Geneva next month. Those are your headlines live on Future Television on this Thursday. In Beirut, I'm Yuna Naufal, and I will be here back tomorrow with a special interview with activist Sara Assaf. Stay with us.
ولا يجوز أن نفسد في علاقاتنا التاريخية.